All right, it's
Great.
going now.
Hello, everyone. This is Zach and Allison doing very preliminary CORI healing training.
Right.
Because a lot of folks couldn't come, so we're recording it for you guys. Okay, so we just want to start off to tell you guys a little bit about what the CORI sealing project within Defenders looks like this year, and what we're hoping to build. So we've been talking a bunch about just wanting to build up interest in order to make the project more solid. Last year was really the first year we did it, and it hasn't been fully integrated into like all of our trainings, and so lots of folks want to take a case but don't know how to do it yet. So we want to streamline that process so that when you take a case you feel equipped, and we also want to figure out who's interested in building this up and shaping what it looks like so we can do it as a team.
Yeah, so along those lines, we're interested in creating sort of a CORI working group of folks who are interested in this type of work, interested in building the practice, like you said, and helping streamline training materials, streamline our intake forms, where we're getting our cases from, working with the strategic partnerships director in order to make sure we're like reaching out and responding to community needs. So if there's any interest at all in sort of participating in that process or learning more about this process, come talk to us.
Yep. You can email us. I'm at agillsanford@jd19.
And I'm at zsosa@jd19.
So definitely reach out if you are interested at all in being a part of the working group or helping us brainstorm how to make this project more solid within Defenders.
Yeah.
Cool.
So without further ado.
Okay, so we're just going to give folks a very, very brief overview. And Zach, please jump in like whenever you want to and if I forget things.
Totally.
Okay, so the big news is that last year Massachusetts passed an omnibus criminal justice reform bill, and that new law has changed CORI sealing. We're actually still parsing out exactly what's happened because there's more minute changes we might become aware of in the future, but for the most part, it changes how long someone has to wait to get their CORI sealed. So it's gone down from 10 years for a felony to 7 years, and for misdemeanors, it's gone down from 5 to 3. Now, there's some exceptions to that. Certain charges are exempt from this CORI clock or take like 15 years, in particular, like aggravated sexual assault stuff or anything involving children is touchier. So you have to check about the waiting periods for those or if they're even eligible for sealing. But for the most part, this is the rule of thumb. 7 years for a felony, 3 years for a misdemeanor. For waiting periods, it's important to understand how they work. So the clock starts ticking at the conviction date, or if the person was ever incarcerated, even if they just served time in jail for like 30 days, it starts from the release date. So it's really helpful to know it is not the end of probation for most charges. Again, I'd have to check. I think there's some where it runs from the end of probation if it was a sex charge, but yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and just to add on, it begins at the conviction date or the release date, whichever's later.
Yes, thank you, Zach. Yeah, whichever is later. And then if there is a new charge of any kind, it resets the clock. So that sucks. So you can't look at someone's CORI and be like, hey, this particular misdemeanor is 6 years old and this new one is just 2 years old, so it's eligible for sealing. Their whole CORI, like the clock tick on if they can get this relief resets every time there's a charge. So that's a bummer, but that's something that's good to know. Okay, there's two types of CORI sealing. I think this has confused people in the past. What Defenders is primarily trying to do is administrative sealing. So that's where you get a packet together and you say, my client is eligible for CORI sealing under this statute because it's been long enough, they've waited long enough, and they should have a clean slate. And you send that packet with supporting materials to the Office of Probation. It's mail-in. There's also judicial sealing. So we can do this, but it's more discretionary. Like probation has to seal it if the person qualifies. There's not discretion there. But judicial hearings, obviously the judge does have discretion, and you'd be taking a case to a judicial hearing if like maybe your client was eligible to seal everything else but just had like one little thing that was going on that was preventing them from getting this relief. That might be a good option to go to a judge and try to ask them to make an exception to seal the CORI. Another place where judicial sealing is really helpful is if your client just really wants you to try. Even if they know they're not eligible under the statute, but they want to go for it, you can tell them about this option. And I would say it's like part of the student attorney relationship to figure out if it's a good case to try for judicial sealing. But that is an option that's available. Do you want to add anything to that, Zach?
I was really briefly, Allison mentioned in terms of the administrative ceilings that we send in supporting materials in order to help make that happen. Just as a brief overview, what that generally includes is an affidavit that you can help draft with your client, as well as any sort of letters of support from any programs they've done, any sort of community service, any like community members who can speak to sort of what they've been doing, what they've been working on, as well as if there's any documentation that their CORI has been preventing them from sort of
getting
employment,
a job or
or like benefits or anything like that. Those are all good supporting materials that we can all help gather together and send in for those hearings.
Yeah, and that's pretty important for both of these types of sealings because judges want to see all of that as well. And you can go on the court website, like if you're doing sealing at BMC, they'll tell you what they're looking for, and it's exactly what Zach said. They want to hear, you're like out of the frame, do you want to? Sorry. It's exactly what Zach said. It's like, why is this a barrier to your client moving on with their life and accomplishing their goals? And you kind of have to make a case that they've like moved on from whatever their life used to be in terms of why they have the charges on their record. So that's an important part, is like the narrative and the documents that support that.
Right.
And that's something that older defenders who've done sealing can help you with. Like you're not on your own on that, and there's stuff on the R drive about how to create the packet.
Yeah.
Okay, event on October 15th. Do you want to talk about this?
Do you have a question?
Camille.
Yeah. How does immigration affect this? I had a CORI sealing last year where both the client and whoever we work with, is it Chris? I don't know.
I think we usually work with the HERC clinic.
Because I was told not to go
seal.
forward with the seal.
So just in case people couldn't hear, Camille was asking about how immigration intersects with this, and if you should learn early on if your client is a U.S. citizen or if they've got a green card or like what their status is, because it can be complicated later down the road if they're trying to go through a process to become a citizen to have sealed records. So that's something that, I mean, I don't know a ton about that other than like it can be an issue because so like some people like to try to go through the naturalization process before they seal so that everything's out in the open when they're doing the immigration stuff, and then they can work on like the other part of their life with their record. But I'm not 100% sure how that works. We should talk to Phil Torrey at HERC. He's the crimmigration guy. I'm sure he would know more.
Yeah, I would say if you're ever in a situation where you're not sure what to do in terms of immigration status, definitely make a HERC referral, or at least sort of talk to Phil or talk to other folks at HERC who can sort of shed some light on exactly what to do with that client's particular situation.
HERC full name?
Oh, the
HERC, Harvard
Immigration and Refugee Clinic.
Cool, that's a really good question. Thank you for flagging that. Okay, our event on October 15th. Woo! Yay! So we're hoping defenders will come help us. It's at 4:30. It's probably going to go until like 7. It's in Roxbury, and it's a community event in partnership with GBLS and other folks to get the word out that CORI sealing has changed and help people know that we do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So it'll be a really interesting event. We're just hoping folks to can come out. Just email Allison and I if you're interested.
Or you can email Camille.
Or Camille.
Yeah,
good point. So we're just hoping to get as many people as possible.
It's a great place to just start to come and start talking to people about CORI sealing and giving them a little bit of advice. So I just want to run through what we would do there as volunteers. So the first thing is you want to kind of chat with the potential client and evaluate their case. And what I mean by that is like, this is the gray area where they're not our client yet, and so we have to be careful about giving them legal advice, but you can give general advice, right? Like, you can explain to someone how CORI sealing works and what the statute means. They may or may not really know what's on their CORI. Some folks are very familiar with their CORI and some people aren't. And so you really can't tell someone what you think they'd be eligible for in terms of what type of sealing until you see the CORI. So if you think the person could be eligible and they want defenders to try to take them on as a client, what you've got to do at this community event is get them to sign the CORI authorization form, because that's what allows us to pull their CORI. We can't do that without their consent. And then we can get in touch with them and say like, hey, we think we could go forward with this or not. Yes.
Just quick base question.
Yeah.
What is a CORI?
Oh man, I'm sorry.
What does it stand for? How much information does it actually encompass? Like, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's essentially someone's criminal record
Just a
in
criminal
Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So it'll just list different charges, convictions, sort of just the whole shebang of anyone's past contact with the criminal legal system.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
most important thing to know is that charges and dismissals are all on there. So
Mhm.
even if the person, even if they went to trial and got a not guilty, that's on there. If it was never prosecuted but they were formally charged, it's on there. So it's really everything. And then you're gonna hear sometimes about a CORI. That's the court activity record for the person. So a CORI is just their criminal charges. A CORI is more expansive but includes the CORI. I'm not 100% sure everything that's on the CORI. It's like court appearances.
Yeah.
So I would
yeah.
assume like if your client requested a civil restraining order, but they were coming into the court to ask for that, that's probably on their CORI.
Yeah, yeah. The CORI would be more like final, like dispositions of
Okay.
different charges or cases.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great question. I'm sorry we did not
Really
say
good
that.
question.
CORI is
Right.
the acronym for your criminal record if you're in Massachusetts.
I was gonna assume, but I just
Yeah,
wanna make
no,
sure.
super helpful to ask. Okay.
Yeah.
So back to the event on the 15th. So the one thing you're going to want to do is make sure you get contact info for a potential client and get them to sign the CORI authorization form so we can then run the information to pull their CORI. And most of our clients, they've got to be income qualifying, so we'll have handouts about this at the event, but you should also ask about their income, and you're going to need specific pieces of information to pull their CORI and to fill out what's called an affidavit of indigency, which is how we pull the CORI electronically without having anyone pay for it. So you need like a bunch of personal information to do that. And again, this will be on a handout. But those are all the things you'd have to walk away with in order to then go process the potential client's information and see if we could help them with sealing. So we really hope you want to come and do this with us. And the two things you can do now are just sign up for the event with me, Zach, or notify Camille, and she'll let us know. And also let us know if you want to be a part of the working group that Zach talked about at the beginning.
Yeah. Awesome.
Any other questions?
Or questions?
No, that's it.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
do CORI sealing. Woo!